Good morning, everyone. So today I'm going to walk you through how to write your narrative. Now, there's a few things that you need to take out before we get started. So first thing we're going to take out is going to be our brainstorm and outline. For you, it's going to be on a regular line sheet of paper. You're also going to need your essay graphic organizer, your narrative graphic organizer. You're going to need your 5 signs your house is haunted. And you are going to need your sensory detail graphic organizer. Okay, if you do not have any of these, missing any one of them, please go ahead and stop the video now, raise your hand, and I will come around and give you whatever you need. Okay, now there's going to be 2 sections to this video. I'm going to continue going. For those of us who know what our story is going to be about, you have your outline completed, you have all of your events written down. If this is you, you're just going to go ahead and keep watching the video. Now, if you are still a little bit unsure what you want to happen in your video, then you're going to continue watching, but at the end, I'm going to go in a little bit more detail about what you can do and how I can help you. Okay? All right. So first, let's get started. This first part, some of you or many of you have already done. You did it with me earlier this week. If you have, then you can skip this part of the video and I'll give you guys a timestamp of when you can move on. So if you've already transferred the information from your outline to your graphic organizer, then you can skip this part. That's where we're adding the information that we need for this section here. If we look at the screen, it's the boxed section. If you've already transferred all of that information, then you can go ahead and skip ahead. If you haven't, stick with me. So what we're going to do first is we're going to transfer information from our outline to our graphic organizer. Okay, you've already done all the hard work. We just need to kind of copy and paste from one page to another. So we have the information that we have for our exposition. You'll see that I have my characters, my setting, and my conflict in my outline. And then I've gone ahead and written that thing over again over on the graphic organizer for my narrative. Okay, so I do that for exposition, paragraph 1. And then if I go down, I've done the same thing for paragraph 2, my rising action here. So blank, that would be my character's name, goes to a haunted house and sets up camp. I have that right here for event number 1. Blank goes to a haunted house and sets up camp. And the same thing, event number 2, blank hears weird noises coming from the basement. Blank hears weird noises coming from the basement. Okay, and I'm going to do that for all of my paragraphs and all of the pages here. So from my narrative or from my outline, the things that I have for exposition, okay, I'm going to copy and place right here. So the part that we're working on right now is filling in this information on this page. Turning the page, doing it on this page right here, then on this page here, and on the final page here, and at the bottom here. Okay? Now, that part is pretty straightforward. Now, the reason that I have you do that is because people tend to want to write their whole story in the first paragraph, and that's not really what we want. We want 5 separate paragraphs, okay? So the reason that you write it up top is because this is just there to kind of remind you of what you're going to be talking about in this paragraph, okay? So here, I'm only going to be introducing my setting, which is going to be in my story. The story that I'm doing is a house at midnight. I'm introducing my characters, and I'm introducing my conflict. I'm not really talking about any of the big events that are happening yet. I'm saving that for my next paragraph, okay? Here, when I have for rising action, I'm going to be talking about when my main character goes to a haunted house and sets up camp, and when my main character hears weird noises in the basement. That's it. Okay, I should not be going into my next events, the haunt appearing in the room briefly and then disappearing, and then making even louder noises from the basement. Okay, so that's going to just be for this paragraph, and this is just going to be for that paragraph. Okay, so you're not going to get ahead of yourself. You're not writing your entire story in that first paragraph. Okay, after you have this done, then we can kind of get into each paragraph. Okay, So for our first paragraph, we're looking at page 1 right here. We're writing in this box, and this is going to be our exposition. So in this paragraph, we're really just introducing our characters, introducing our setting, and introducing our conflict. So if we're thinking of a movie, it's like the first 10 minutes of a movie where nothing really happens. You're just being introduced to who the movie's about, what they're like, what their relationship with other characters in the movie is like. And then at the very 15-minute mark, that's when stuff starts to happen. Okay. So in this paragraph, you are just introducing your character. So an example of something that you can write, or maybe some way that you can start it, is just with the phrase in the beginning, and then go ahead and just introduce your characters and your conflict and your setting. Now, something that we want to keep in mind is that we need to write our story from first person point of view. Okay. That means that I'm using words like I, me, my, we, and our. Okay. It's I went to a haunted house, not Shelley went to a haunted house. Okay. You're really putting yourself in the position of a character in your story. Now, that doesn't mean you have to, that doesn't mean Ms. V has to be in the story. That just means that you're going to take over for one of your characters. So whatever character you like, I don't care which character you choose, but you need to write from the perspective of one of the characters in your story. Okay. Now, the main things that you want to tell me are just who you are, what your relationship with the other characters in your story is, and how you come about to be in a haunted house. Okay, so I took the first paragraph from the haunted house story that we read, and I kind of modified it a little bit so that it would work for our story. So what I have is, one time I went to see if I could put a haunt to rest in the house in blank. So you get to decide wherever you want it to be. The house was, I would describe my house here. The house has been haunted for about blank years, so I get to decide how many years. And several people had tried to stay there all night, but they always would get scared out by the haunt. And that's it. Okay? So you don't need to go into all of the events that are happening yet. Just introduce me to your characters. What are they like? What's their personality like? What's their relationship like with other characters in the story? And how do they come about this haunted house? Okay? Once you've done that, you can move on to your next paragraph. Make sure that you have 5 sentences in this paragraph. An easy way to get to those 5 sentences is to include sensory details. So that's where this bad boy comes into play. Okay, so on here, you should have sentences that describe what things look like, what they felt like, what they sounded like, and what they smelled like. Now, an easy one that you can include here is for something that you saw, what something looked like. An easy thing that you can describe is the house. What kind of house is this? Is it a scary looking house? Is it old? Is it new? Is there anything in the front? Like, what kind of condition is it in? You can spend so many sentences describing this house to me. What I would want you to do is to kind of close your eyes and picture the house in your head, and then just describe to me, what does it look like? Okay, I'm going to have a separate little video on how to write descriptive sentences. So if you're stuck on that, you can go ahead and watch that video. You can pause here and watch that video. But we're going to go ahead and keep on going. Okay. Okay, so once you're done with your exposition, you can go ahead and move on to your rising action. Now, I'm only sticking to these 2 events that I have up here in the corner, okay? I'm talking about when my main character goes to the haunted house and sets up camp, and when my main character hears weird noises in the basement, okay? Obviously, that's going to be different for you because you're going to have your own events that are happening. Just the key here is to remember that we're only sticking to these events. There are no other crazy things happening, or I'm not moving on to what I've got here in paragraph 3. Okay, so for our second paragraph, you have 2 events already. So that's already 2 of the 5 sentences that you need. The other 3 sentences, again, need to be our sensory details, right? You want it to be more detailed, more description. That's what makes your story interesting. You want to really make sure that you're showing me what's happening instead of just telling me what's happening. Okay. After you've done and told and showed me these 2 events happening, then you can move on to your next paragraph. In this paragraph here, we're talking about these 2 events, so events 3 and 4. And again, you've already got 2 sentences out of the 5 that you need. Tell me what's happening here. Show me what's happening here. What do things look like? What do they smell like? We really want to add in those sensory details. Okay. Now, this one right here, our climax. So on page 4 of our packet, okay, on page 4 of our packet, this is the big one. All right, this is our climax. This is the most interesting part, the turning point in our story. So this is when things get real. All right, you are either going to make peace with your ghost, or you are going to make war with your ghost. You're either going to go head to head, or you're going to figure things out agreeably. So it's entirely up to you. In my story, I decided I'm going off of the haunted house story that we read. We're going to make peace. We're going to work things out. I'm going to help the ghost. The ghost is going to help me. Okay, so in my story, the haunt tells my main character why they were killed and promises them a reward if they can get justice for them. Okay, so this entire paragraph should be about this one thing that happens. Okay, if your main character is going to try and get rid of your ghost, this is where they're fighting. This is where things are getting real. Okay, so there's only one event, but I'm requiring 5 sentences for this. So there should be a lot of details, a lot of describing of what's happening here. Okay, this should be the most interesting part. Now, after you're done with your climax, you've only got one paragraph, and that's basically the end of your story. So there shouldn't be anything that's too crazy happening after this. Okay? Okay, so if we skip down to our last paragraph, we have here our falling action and we have our resolution. Okay, now the resolution is how the story ends. Okay, so we need to make sure that whatever we write for falling action gets us from this event happening to the end. Okay, so in my story, my main character gets justice for the ghost, and then it ends with my main character going back to the house and collecting the reward from the haunt. Okay, so here for my falling action, I want about like 3 sentences. This part should be a little bit longer, so I should spend around 3 sentences explaining how my main character gets justice for the haunt, and then at the end, I just have to describe how it ends. And here, 2 sentences would be enough to describe my character going back and collecting their reward. Okay, now you can absolutely have a twist ending. Okay, how you end your story is entirely up to you. Maybe in your climax you decide that they're going to duke it out. Maybe your ghost wins. That's cool. That would be an interesting story to read. It's entirely up to you. This is just the example that I'm using to show you. Okay, but whatever you choose, you need to make sure that it makes sense and that you don't have too many crazy things happening in your last paragraph. This is the end. You should be wrapping things up so that they come to this resolution here. Okay? Now, once you finish writing this last paragraph, that's it. You're done with your story. And what you would do now is you would go back and go through and reread what you have, make sure that you have enough sensory details so that your story is exciting and engaging and fun for people to read. Now, once you get to this point, once you finish writing everything that you need for your rough draft here, then you can go ahead and start typing. Now, remember, each page is its own paragraph. So everything that you write here is for your first paragraph. Okay, all of that is your first paragraph. Then the second page is going to be your second paragraph. We want to make sure that we keep them separate when we start typing. Okay, now, if you need any directions on how to write good sensory details, then you're going to go ahead and click on that other video when we get to it. If you need help writing dialogue, we can click on that other video and that will help you out as well. Now, okay, so if you're writing your own story, you got this. If you are requiring a little bit more help with your story, then you're going to go ahead and stick around for the next part of this video. Okay? Okay? So, if you need more help with your story, then here we are at the top. What you're going to do is you are going to go ahead and use the outline that I have here. So what we did is, or what I did is I used the haunted house story that we read, the one, this one here, okay? And we're going to go ahead and borrow the plot from that story. So we're going to talk about that right here. You're going to change up the characters a little bit. You're going to make your own main character. So choose whatever name you want. We're still going to have a haunt, which is our ghost, and we need some kind of murderer. Okay. Our setting is going to be the same. It's going to be at a haunted house at midnight. And then the conflict is going to be, if we look here, the conflict is going to be that the house is haunted by, and you need to decide who the house is haunted by. You get to choose the ghost. So the two main things here that are going to be different from the story that we read is the name of your main character, so it cannot be a preacher, and who your ghost is and why they were murdered. Okay, so those are two things that you need to come up with on your own. Other than that, you're going to copy the same thing that I have right here in this red box. Then you're going to copy the same thing that I have here. Your first event is that your main character goes to the haunted house and sets up camp. The second event is that your main character hears weird noises in the basement. Your third event is going to be that the haunt appears in the room briefly, but then disappears. Your fourth event is that your main character hears even louder, scarier noises coming from the basement. Your climax is going to be that the haunt tells your main character why they were killed and promises them a reward if they're able to get justice for them. Your falling action is that your main character gets justice for the haunt. And their story is going to end with the main character going back to the house and collecting the reward from the haunt. Okay, so what you are going to do is you are going to copy what I have here onto your graphic organizer. So this right here is going to get copied right here. This right here. This right here is going to get copied right there. This right here for our third paragraph, right there. This here for climax, right here. And falling action, right here. And then resolution is going to be at the bottom, right there. Okay, so you can go ahead and pause this video and copy it down, and then we can go ahead and resume. Okay, now that you have each of these written down and copied onto your graphic organizer, okay, we're going to go ahead and get started up down here. Now, you're going to do the same thing that everyone else has to do, which in regards to writing their story in first person, you're going to use the pronouns I, me, my, we, our. You're not going to say the he went to do this. Okay, you're going to be the main character. So whatever name you chose for your main character, that's who you are. That's whose perspective you're writing from. Okay, now you can either use the sentence frame in the beginning and then go ahead and write your story. Or if you feel like you need a little bit more help, then what you can do is you can borrow this paragraph that I have down here for you. Again, it's borrowed from our haunted house story. It's that first paragraph of the story, and it's just been modified a little bit so that it's in first person and so that we can include a little bit more details. Okay, so what you would do is you would copy this paragraph here onto this box. Okay, so on here you would write, one time I went to see if I could put a haunt to rest at a house inn, and then in this blank right here, you're going to go ahead and put the name of a town or a city that you would like your story to take place in. Then you would continue with the house was, and here you are going to describe what the house looks like. Okay, so is it a big house? Is it a little house? Is it old? Is it new? Again, you're going to close your eyes and create a mental image of what this house looks like and what's around it, what's in front, and how does the grass look like? Is there a gate? What does it look like? And you are going to describe it to me. Then the house has been haunted for about blank years. So here you're just going to put a number of however many years you want the house to be haunted. And then the last sentence, And then the last sentence, you're just going to go ahead and straight copy. Several people had tried to stay there all night, but they always would get scared out by the haunt. And then that's your first paragraph done. Now, go ahead and finish that. Pause this video, copy this down, add in what you need here. And then we can move on to the next paragraph, okay? So, right here for rising action, we're going to turn to the second page. We're going to turn to the second page, and we're going to be writing 5 sentences describing these events that are happening here, okay? So, in this box, you're going to talk about these 2 events. Now, I'm not going to be giving you a paragraph for that. You already have the events. You need to tell me the story. But these are the main things that are happening. You are going to give me sensory details, telling me what things look like, what things smell like, what they felt like, what they tasted like, what they felt like, all of those things. Okay? But we're going to make sure that we just stick to these 2 events. Your main character going to the haunted house and setting up camp, and your main character hearing weird noises in the basement. So this is a really good one. That second event is a really good one to do the sensory detail for sound. So what specifically did it sound like? After you've done with that, go ahead and pause it. Or once you've completed this paragraph, you can pause the video and then move on. Now, paragraph 3, again, you're only talking about the 2 events that we have written up here. Our haunt appears in the room briefly, but then disappears. And the second one is the main character hears even louder, scarier noises coming from the basement. So this entire paragraph right here, we're writing it, is just going to be about those 2 events. But again, you need to give me those sensory details to describe what happens, and you're showing me instead of just telling me. So go ahead and pause the video here, and then once you moved on, you can go ahead, or once you're done with this, you can go ahead and move on to the next paragraph. Now, for your climax, again, this is the most interesting part of your story. So if I'm bored during this part, we're not doing it right. So in this box now, we're going to talk about, this was where you need to give me a little bit more of your ideas, okay? The haunt tells the main character why they were killed. You need to tell me why they're killed. It needs to be different than just for their money and by their husband or fiance, okay? Like it is in the story that we read. You need to come up with why this haunt was killed and who killed them, okay? And that is what you're explaining to me here. This should be super duper interesting. You need to explain to me the whole backstory of your ghost here, okay? Once you've done that, go ahead and pause this. Go ahead and pause this video, write this down, and once you've done that, you can go ahead and move on to the next paragraph. Now, in our last paragraph, this is the home stretch, okay? We've only really got 1 paragraph. This is our last paragraph. So there shouldn't be anything that's too crazy happening, which is why we just have our main character getting justice for the haunt. Now that should be like 3 sentences. Okay, this should not be a whole nother adventure. It should be something that is easily done. Okay, so just like in the story that we read, right, the haunt, the preacher is able to get justice fairly quickly. And so you need to be able to do the same for your story. How does your main character get justice for the haunt? After you've written that down, I just need 1 or 2 sentences where your main character goes back to the goes back to the house and collects their reward from their haunt, whether it's them digging it up from somewhere or it's like hidden in a secret spot. These 2 sentences should be telling me how your main character gets a hold of it. And then that would be your ending. Okay? And then once you've done that, you're done. You've finished your entire story. And you can go ahead and pause this video and begin typing. I know that every single one of you can do an excellent job doing this. You just really need to stay focused and try and really get in the zone of writing a spooky story, okay? If you need help with anything else, go ahead and just rewatch different parts of the video. Maybe watch my separate little tutorials on how to write sensory details. Okay, that should be super helpful. If you need anything else from me, you just know, raise your hand and I will come around and help you and get around to as many people as I can. You got this.